Welcome to the world of daily life stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss new stories. Enjoy listening. The flight that changed everything. The airport lounge was bustling with activity, a sea of travelers weaving between rows of seats and clusters of luggage. Alyssa Monroe, a polished and confident woman in her late 30s, sat serenely by the window. Her gaze wandered to the planes taxiing on the runway, a faint smile gracing her lips as she sipped her herbal tea. Dressed in a tailored navy pantsuit paired with a gold silk scarf, Alyssa emanated sophistication. Her carry-on, a sleek leather bag, was neatly placed beside her chair, and the delicate gold watch on her wrist caught the morning sunlight. Alyssa was no stranger to air travel. A successful business consultant, she often found herself navigating the skies for high-profile meetings or conferences. But this trip was special. She had just closed a significant deal, one that represented years of hard work and perseverance. This flight, she decided, was her moment to celebrate, a rare occasion to indulge in the luxury of first class. As the boarding call for Flight 719 echoed through the lounge, Alyssa rose gracefully, clutching her passport and boarding pass. She approached the gate with a calm assurance, her heels clicking softly against the polished floor. The gate attendant offered a professional but detached smile. "Enjoy your flight, Miss Monroe," the attendant said, her tone flat. "Thank you," Alyssa replied warmly, refusing to mirror the indifference. Her composure was unshakable, a characteristic she had honed over years of navigating a world that often sought to undermine her. The first-class cabin was a haven of quiet elegance. Plush leather seats, a calming color palette, and an attentive crew greeted Alyssa as she entered. She stowed her bag effortlessly, taking her seat near the window. A soft sigh escaped her lips as she settled in, allowing herself a rare moment of relaxation. As the plane began to fill, a uniformed flight attendant approached. Her name tag read Clara, and her practiced smile hinted at years of experience. "Good morning, ma'am. Can I get you anything to start your flight?" Clara asked. "Yes, please," Alyssa responded, her voice measured and polite. "I'd like a glass of champagne." Clara's smile faltered for the briefest moment, her eyes scanning Alyssa from head to toe. There was an almost imperceptible shift in her demeanor, something colder, dismissive. "I'm sorry, but we don't serve champagne before takeoff," Clara replied curtly, her tone devoid of the warmth she had offered to other passengers. Alyssa blinked, momentarily caught off guard. She had flown first class enough times to know the routine, and champagne was typically offered during boarding. She chose to clarify, her tone unwavering. "I see. I was under the impression that champagne is available as a pre-flight option." Clara's expression tightened. "Well, it's not. Perhaps you'd like water or juice instead?" The surrounding passengers began to take notice, their curious glances darting toward the interaction. Alyssa felt the weight of their eyes, but remained composed. "No, thank you," she said simply, offering a tight smile. "I'll wait." Clara walked away, her posture stiff. Alyssa leaned back in her seat, her mind racing. She wasn't one to jump to conclusions, but the encounter left a sour taste. Was it a misunderstanding? Or was there something more to the dismissive tone and the lack of effort? As the plane taxied to the runway, Alyssa resolved to put the incident behind her. After all, she was here to celebrate, not to dwell on perceived slights. But fate had other plans, and the day was far from over. The calm before the storm. The plane ascended smoothly, the faint hum of the engine settling into a rhythmic background noise. Alyssa adjusted her seat, glancing out the window as the sprawling city below transformed into a patchwork of fields and rivers. It was a serene view, one that she often found grounding. But her thoughts lingered on the interaction with Clara. She had shrugged it off, yet something about the flight attendant's dismissive tone stayed with her. Alyssa had learned long ago to pick her battles, but she also knew when something warranted her attention. The in-flight service began soon after the seatbelt sign was turned off. Clara reappeared, her tray balanced with an assortment of beverages. Alyssa watched as she served the passengers around her with practiced efficiency, the veneer of friendliness returning as she poured champagne into crystal flutes and handed them to others in first class. When Clara reached Alyssa's row, her demeanor shifted again. Her smile vanished, replaced by a neutral expression. She stopped and raised an eyebrow, as if surprised that Alyssa had the audacity to expect anything. "Would you like something to drink now?" Clara asked, her tone clipped. "Yes, I'll have that glass of champagne now," Alyssa said, keeping her voice steady but firm. Her request was neither unreasonable nor out of place, it was a simple acknowledgement of the service she was entitled to. Clara hesitated, her eyes narrowing slightly. "We're running low on champagne," she said, her voice barely above a murmur. "I'll need to check if there's enough left." Before Alyssa could respond, Clara turned and walked briskly toward the galley. Alyssa watched her retreating figure, a sense of unease creeping in. Moments later, Clara returned with a glass of orange juice, setting it on Alyssa's tray table without explanation. "I brought you this instead," Clara said, already moving to the next passenger. "Excuse me," Alyssa said, her tone calm but insistent. "I didn't ask for orange juice. I asked for champagne." Clara turned, her lips pressed into a thin line. "As I mentioned, we're running low. This is what we have available." Alyssa met her gaze, her eyes unwavering. "That's interesting," she said, her voice carrying a quiet authority. "Because I saw you serve champagne to the gentleman 2 rows ahead of me just moments ago." Clara's cheeks flushed, a mixture of embarrassment and irritation flickering across her face. The exchange had begun to attract attention from other passengers. Alyssa could feel their eyes on her, some curious, others sympathetic. Still, she remained composed, refusing to let her emotions dictate her actions. "If there's truly no champagne left," Alyssa continued, her tone measured, "then I'd appreciate a proper explanation rather than a dismissive substitution." Clara opened her mouth to respond but was interrupted by the passenger seated across the aisle. A middle-aged man in a tailored suit leaned forward, his expression incredulous. "She's right," he said, addressing Clara. "I just received a glass of champagne. If there's a shortage, perhaps you should have mentioned it before offering it to others." Clara glanced around, her discomfort evident. "I'll check again," she muttered, before disappearing into the galley. The man turned to Alyssa with a sympathetic smile. "Unbelievable," he said. "It's clear what's going on here." Alyssa nodded slightly, appreciating his support but unwilling to vocalize the underlying issue just yet. She had long ago learned the power of silence, of letting actions speak louder than words. If this was going to be addressed, it needed to be handled with precision and dignity. Minutes passed, and Clara did not return. Another flight attendant, a younger man with a more genuine smile, approached Alyssa's seat. He carried a glass of champagne on a silver tray, setting it down carefully in front of her. "I apologize for the delay, ma'am," he said, his tone courteous. "Please enjoy." "Thank you," Alyssa said, her voice soft but firm. She watched as the young man walked away, his professionalism a stark contrast to Clara's behavior. Alyssa took a sip of the champagne, savoring the crisp, effervescent taste. Yet the experience was tainted, her moment of celebration overshadowed by an encounter that had left her questioning how she was perceived, not just as a customer, but as a person. Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of whispers. Across the aisle, the suited man was engaged in a quiet but animated conversation with another passenger. Both glanced in her direction, their expressions a mix of outrage and disbelief. Alyssa realized that the incident had not gone unnoticed, and the ripple effects were already beginning to spread. Determined to maintain her composure, Alyssa reached for her phone. She opened the Notes app and began documenting the interaction in meticulous detail, the dismissive tone, the contradictory statements, the substitution without consent. She included the time and the names of the crew members involved, her fingers moving swiftly over the screen. This wasn't about the champagne, she thought. It never had been. It was about principle, about ensuring that no one else would have to endure a similar experience. Alyssa had spent years advocating for fairness and accountability in her professional life, and she saw no reason why she should accept anything less in her personal life. As she finished typing, the plane jolted slightly, a reminder of their altitude. Alyssa tucked her phone away and leaned back, her mind clear and her resolve unshaken. The storm was brewing, and she was ready. The catalyst for change. The cabin settled into a steady rhythm as the flight progressed. Passengers browsed their devices, flipped through magazines, or immersed themselves in movies on their personal screens. But for Alyssa Monroe, the atmosphere was anything but tranquil. She could feel the subtle weight of the earlier exchange, like a heavy cloud lingering in the air. Despite her composed exterior, her mind was sharp, calculating her next move. Alyssa was no stranger to adversity. As a black woman navigating corporate spaces dominated by individuals who often underestimated her, she had developed a keen sense of when and how to assert herself. Today was no exception. She wasn't angry, not yet, but she was resolute. Her dignity and the principle of fairness were non-negotiable. She reached for her phone again. Alyssa didn't just intend to document the incident for her own peace of mind. She knew the power of leveraging her influence and connections. As a business consultant with a robust network, Alyssa had worked with numerous companies in customer experience and corporate accountability. If there was one thing she understood, it was the value of public perception. She composed an email with precision, addressing it to the airline's executive customer service team. She detailed her experience, framing it not as a personal grievance, but as an example of a systemic issue. She wrote about the importance of equitable treatment, the implications of implicit bias, and how her interaction today underscored a failure in customer service training. Subject: urgent, in-flight incident reflecting on service standards. Dear Airline Executive Team. Flight number 719. Date: today's date. My name is Alyssa Monroe, a frequent traveler with your airline. I am writing to bring to your attention a concerning interaction on today's flight that reflects poorly on your organization's service standards and commitment to inclusivity. She detailed the incident step by step, from the denial of champagne to the dismissive behavior of the attendant named Clara. Alyssa emphasized how such incidents could damage the airline's reputation, particularly in today's climate where consumers increasingly expect accountability and equity from the brands they support. She ended the email by requesting a formal acknowledgement and an explanation of how the airline intended to address such behavior in the future. Satisfied with the message, she hit send. But Alyssa wasn't done. She tapped into her phone's contacts and selected a name, Jessica Rawlings, the Vice President of Customer Relations for the airline, a former client of Alyssa's firm. The phone rang twice before Jessica picked up. Alyssa. It's been a while, came Jessica's cheerful voice. How are you? I wish I were calling under better circumstances, Alyssa began, her tone professional but firm. She wasted no time summarizing her experience on the flight, laying out the facts without embellishment. Jessica's tone shifted instantly. Alyssa, I'm so sorry to hear this. That's unacceptable. I'll escalate this immediately. I appreciate that, Alyssa said, her voice calm but resolute. This isn't just about me. It's about ensuring your team understands the importance of treating every passenger with respect. A bias, whether intentional or not, reflects poorly on the entire brand. You're absolutely right, Jessica replied. Let me make some calls. You'll hear from someone before you land. Ending the call, Alyssa leaned back in her seat, a faint sense of satisfaction settling over her. She wasn't looking for retribution, what she wanted was accountability. She wanted Clara to understand the weight of her actions, and for the airline to take concrete steps to prevent similar incidents in the future. As the plane cruised at 35,000 feet, the ripple effects of Alyssa's actions began to manifest. The pilot's voice crackled over the intercom. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your captain speaking. We apologize for any inconvenience earlier. Our crew is committed to ensuring every passenger has an excellent experience. If there's anything we can do to improve your journey, please don't hesitate to let us know. The announcement was vague, but Alyssa knew it wasn't coincidental. Moments later, Clara reappeared at her seat, her demeanor noticeably altered. Gone was the aloofness, replaced by a nervous energy. "Miss Monroe," Clara began, her voice softer than before. "I'd like to apologize for earlier. It seems there was a misunderstanding about the champagne service. I didn't mean to cause any offense." Alyssa looked up at her, studying her face. Clara's words carried an air of rehearsed sincerity, but Alyssa knew the apology was likely a result of pressure from above. Still, she accepted it graciously. "Thank you, Clara," Alyssa replied evenly. "I hope this serves as a learning opportunity. It's not just about what's served, it's about how people are treated." Clara nodded, her face flushed. "Of course, ma'am." As Clara walked away, Alyssa noticed the murmurs around her. Fellow passengers exchanged glances, some nodding in silent agreement. The man across the aisle leaned over again. "You handled that with incredible grace," he said. "Most people would have lost their temper." Alyssa smiled faintly. "There's power in staying composed. Anger clouds judgment, but calmness can drive change." By the time the plane began its descent, Alyssa's phone buzzed with a notification. It was an email from the airline's customer relations team, confirming that her concerns were being escalated and assuring her that a thorough investigation was underway. Attached was a personal note from Jessica, promising swift action and outlining steps the airline planned to take to address implicit bias in their training programs. Alyssa closed the email and glanced out the window as the plane touched down. The wheels met the tarmac with a soft thud, marking the end of the flight but the beginning of a broader conversation. Alyssa felt a sense of fulfillment, not because she had won, but because she had turned an incident of disrespect into an opportunity for growth and accountability. The ripple effect. The plane rolled to a gentle stop at the gate, and the familiar chime signaled that passengers could begin disembarking. As Alyssa gathered her belongings, she noticed Clara stationed near the exit, her forced smile a clear attempt to repair the frayed impression left earlier. Alyssa nodded at her in passing, a subtle but deliberate gesture of acknowledgement. She had no intention of further embarrassing the attendant, but she knew their interaction had already set events in motion. Stepping off the plane and into the bustling terminal, Alyssa was met by a representative from the airline waiting just beyond the gate. A middle-aged woman in a crisp uniform approached her with an air of urgency and warmth. "Miss Monroe?" the woman asked, extending a hand. "I'm Sarah Langston, Director of Guest Relations. On behalf of the airline, I want to personally apologize for your experience today." Alyssa shook her hand, appreciating the gesture but maintaining her composure. "Thank you, Sarah. I hope this situation leads to meaningful changes. My concerns go beyond my individual experience. It's about ensuring every passenger feels respected." "Absolutely," Sarah replied, her tone earnest. "We've already begun addressing the matter internally. I'd also like to invite you to meet with our executive team at your convenience to discuss ways we can improve our policies and training programs." Alyssa paused, considering the offer. She had not anticipated such a swift and significant response, but she recognized the opportunity to influence systemic change. "I'd be happy to provide input," she said. "Let's arrange a meeting." With that, Sarah handed Alyssa a business card and promised to follow up. As Alyssa walked away, she couldn't help but reflect on how her calm but firm response had set off a chain of events far beyond what she initially expected. Days later, the meeting. Alyssa found herself in the boardroom of the airline's corporate headquarters, a sleek and modern space with floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city skyline. Seated at the long conference table were members of the airline's executive team, including Jessica Rawlings, the Vice President of Customer Relations, and Mark Hensley, the CEO. "Miss Monroe," Jessica began, "thank you for meeting with us. Your feedback is invaluable as we strive to uphold our commitment to exceptional service and inclusivity." "Thank you for inviting me," Alyssa replied. "I'm here because I believe this isn't just an isolated incident. It reflects a deeper need for training, awareness, and accountability." The discussion was candid and constructive. Alyssa shared her observations about the biases that can seep into customer interactions, emphasizing how subtle acts of disrespect can erode trust and loyalty. She spoke about her experience as a Black woman navigating both professional and personal spaces, highlighting the importance of representation and equity in service industries. Jessica nodded, taking notes. "We've already initiated an internal review," she said. "We're planning to implement mandatory sensitivity training for all employees, starting with flight crews. Additionally, we're revising our feedback protocols to ensure that incidents like yours are addressed promptly and transparently." Mark Hensley leaned forward, his expression thoughtful. "Your story has already sparked discussions among our leadership team. It's clear we need to do better, not just in addressing complaints, but in preventing these situations from occurring in the first place." Alyssa appreciated their willingness to listen, but she wasn't one to be placated by promises alone. "I understand that change takes time," she said, "but it also requires accountability. I hope your commitment extends beyond this meeting." "It does," Jessica assured her. "In fact, we'd like to invite you to join our advisory board for diversity and inclusion. Your expertise and insights would be invaluable as we navigate these changes." The offer took Alyssa by surprise, but she quickly realized the potential impact of such a role. "I'd be honored," she said. "Let's ensure this isn't just a response to a single incident but a step toward lasting improvement." The media and public reaction. News of the incident had begun to circulate, thanks in part to social media. A fellow passenger who had witnessed the exchange posted a detailed account on Twitter, praising Alyssa's composure and calling out the airline's initial mishandling of the situation. The post went viral, sparking widespread discussion about customer service, implicit bias, and the importance of holding corporations accountable. The airline responded swiftly, releasing a public statement acknowledging the incident and outlining the steps they were taking to address it. "We are committed to ensuring that every passenger feels respected and valued," the statement read. "We apologize to Ms. Monroe and to anyone who has experienced similar treatment. We are implementing new training programs to uphold our standards of service and inclusivity." The response garnered mixed reactions. While some applauded the airline's swift action, others questioned why such measures hadn't been in place before. Alyssa, meanwhile, received an outpouring of support from strangers who admired her grace and resilience. The broader impact. As weeks turned into months, Alyssa's involvement with the airline's advisory board proved to be a transformative experience. She worked alongside executives to develop comprehensive training programs that emphasized empathy, cultural competence, and the importance of unbiased decision-making. The airline also launched a mentorship program aimed at fostering diversity within its leadership ranks. Beyond the airline, Alyssa's story inspired other companies to re-evaluate their practices. Industry conferences began featuring panels on inclusivity in customer service, with Alyssa often invited as a keynote speaker. Her experience became a case study in how addressing bias and disrespect head-on could lead to meaningful change. A personal reflection. One evening, as Alyssa sat in her home office reviewing documents for an upcoming meeting, she paused to reflect on the journey that had brought her here. What began as a simple flight, a moment of celebration for her hard work, had turned into a catalyst for change. She had not sought out conflict, but when it arose, she had met it with dignity and determination. Alyssa knew that the work was far from over. Progress required constant effort and vigilance. But she also knew that one voice, when used thoughtfully, could create ripples far beyond its origin. She closed her laptop and leaned back in her chair, a quiet smile playing on her lips. This wasn't just her victory, it was a testament to the power of resilience, accountability, and the courage to demand better. And in her heart, she knew this was only the beginning. The legacy of one voice. Months had passed since Alyssa Monroe's experience on Flight 719, but the ripple effects of her actions were still unfolding. The airline's revamped approach to inclusivity and customer service had become a case study in corporate accountability. Industry professionals, journalists, and thought leaders hailed the incident as a turning point, not just for the company, but for the travel industry as a whole. For Alyssa, life had changed in ways she hadn't anticipated. The incident had thrust her into the spotlight, her name becoming synonymous with resilience, advocacy, and the power of dignified confrontation. Yet, she remained grounded, her focus firmly on driving meaningful change. A new mission. Alyssa's work on the airline's advisory board quickly expanded beyond what anyone had imagined. The initiatives she helped spearhead were more than surface-level fixes, they were transformative. Training programs, the airline's mandatory sensitivity and inclusivity training became a model for others. Alyssa ensured the sessions weren't just checkbox exercises, but immersive experiences. Employees were guided through real-world scenarios, helping them recognize unconscious biases and understand the impact of their actions on passengers. Feedback systems. Alyssa pushed for a transparent feedback mechanism that allowed passengers to report incidents directly to the corporate team, bypassing potential roadblocks in addressing grievances. Reports were tracked and reviewed, with clear accountability measures in place. Diversity in leadership. Under Alyssa's guidance, the airline established a mentorship program to cultivate diverse talent within its ranks. Young professionals from underrepresented backgrounds were paired with senior executives, ensuring a pipeline of leaders who reflected the world they served. Passenger Advocacy Committee. Alyssa also helped create a Passenger Advocacy Committee, composed of frequent flyers from diverse demographics. This group provided ongoing insights into how policies and services could better cater to a broader audience. Her contributions earned her recognition far beyond the airline. Alyssa was invited to speak at international conferences, consulted with other corporations, and even appeared on news programs to discuss her journey. Each time, she emphasized that the real story wasn't about her, it was about the collective potential to challenge systems and demand better. A transformative encounter. One day, Alyssa received a surprising email from Clara, the flight attendant who had been at the center of the original incident. The message was concise, but heartfelt. Subject: Thank you. Dear Miss Monroe. I hope this email finds you well. I've thought about our interaction on Flight 719 more times than I can count. At first, I was defensive and embarrassed, but the truth is, I've learned so much since that day. The training sessions and discussions you helped implement opened my eyes to biases I didn't realize I carried. I owe you an apology, not just for how I treated you, but for how I might have treated others before you. Thank you for being gracious and for turning a moment of conflict into an opportunity for growth. It's a lesson I'll carry with me always. Sincerely, Clara. Alyssa read the email twice, her heart swelling with a mix of emotions. Clara's words were a reminder of why she had chosen to approach the situation the way she did. Change, she had always believed, started with awareness and was sustained by willingness. The broader industry impact. The changes Alyssa had helped implement began to inspire competitors. Other airlines launched their own initiatives, citing her story as a catalyst for introspection. Hotel chains, rideshare companies, and even restaurants reached out to Alyssa for advice on improving their customer service policies. One particularly moving moment came when a young black woman approached Alyssa at an airport lounge. "You're Alyssa Monroe, right?" she asked, her voice tinged with awe. "Yes," Alyssa replied, smiling warmly. "I just want to thank you," the woman said. "I read about what you did. As someone who's had to deal with subtle disrespect more times than I can count, it's empowering to see someone like you stand up with so much grace." The encounter stayed with Alyssa. It reminded her that her actions had resonated far beyond a single flight, inspiring others to demand respect and equality in their own lives. A milestone achievement. 1 year after the incident, the airline invited Alyssa to a special event unveiling their new customer service pledge. Held in a grand conference hall, the event was attended by employees, executives, media, and passengers. The CEO took to the stage, acknowledging Alyssa's pivotal role in shaping their new approach. "Our journey toward better service and inclusivity wouldn't have been possible without the courage and guidance of Alyssa Monroe," he said, gesturing toward her. Her calm resolve in the face of injustice taught us all a valuable lesson. Treating every individual with respect isn't just good ethics, it's good business. Alyssa was invited to speak. Taking the stage, she looked out at the audience, her heart swelling with gratitude and determination. "Change isn't always comfortable," she began. "It requires us to confront our blind spots, to listen, and to grow. My experience on Flight 719 wasn't unique, it was emblematic of challenges many people face every day. But what matters is how we respond. When we choose dignity over outrage, persistence over defeat, we can create ripples of change that reach far beyond ourselves." The room erupted into applause, the moment cementing Alyssa's legacy. A lasting legacy. As the years went on, Alyssa's work continued to influence industries beyond travel. Her story became part of leadership seminars, university curricula, and corporate case studies. She founded her own consultancy focused on diversity and inclusion, mentoring the next generation of advocates and changemakers. For Alyssa, the experience on Flight 719 wasn't just a turning point, it was a testament to the power of one voice, wielded with wisdom and grace. Her journey wasn't about seeking revenge or attention, it was about reminding the world of the inherent dignity every individual deserves. And in the quiet moments, as she sipped her tea by the window or gazed at the city lights from her apartment, Alyssa would reflect on how an ordinary flight had transformed into an extraordinary mission, one that she was proud to carry forward, one step at a time.